So what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at developing a strategic plan for your organisation. Now your strategic plan is really a document that encapsulates what your business is going to be doing over a period of time and what you're trying to create. Okay, so that's your strategic plan. Okay. Like anything that we do, we need to have some sort of plan for what we want to do and how we're going to achieve it. And the strategic plan from our business perspective is exactly that. It's an overview of business management. So what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do. Okay, and it's applicable to the business organisation. Okay, so there's a few things that what we're going to do is we're going to go through and start to identify what's in that strategic plan and why it's put together. So it's driven by the long-term vision for the organisation. When we say long-term, we're looking 3 to 5 years in length, okay? We want to get enough time that we can actually start to make some real progress, but not too much time that, if we plan out over, past the 5-year mark, look, things change, okay? So what we set out to do today, 5 years later or over 5 years later might not be as relevant. So there's no 10-year plan. It's 3 years, so short enough to achieve something worthwhile, but maxed out to 5 years. So we're not going too far beyond the horizon. We can't really tell what's going on. Okay, now the strategic plan is a really high-level plan. The point of a strategic plan is not to be ultra detailed down to the nth degree. Okay, it's a bit of a driving document. Gives everyone a good idea of what's happening at that high level, and it's not designed to do your day-to-day operations from. Okay, everything we then do relates back up to the strategic plan. So this really sets a direction, and it's really rough. Just tells us where we're going as an organisation. What then happens is all the other plans link to that about how we're going to get there. Okay, now the strategic plan is usually, well, almost always, the responsibility of the CEO or the business owner to put together. Okay, so it's their business. They need to know where they want it to go, and they need to drive that accordingly. There are a few things that go into the strategic plan, and when we start to think about that, we start to consider the various aspects, such as what is our company vision. Okay, so the company vision is your overall mission statement. Okay, we need to start to look at the business goals, our financial goals, stakeholders, and our risks. So there's a few things there that we're going to think about. So the business goal, we're going to start thinking about our financial goals. We need to think about stakeholders all the time. And we're going to talk about risks, okay? Because that's something that's always going to be there that we always need to consider. So when we're talking about the vision, what we're really talking about there is we're looking at how we want our business to look. What is it that we want to be doing over that time period? So over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to become the #1 provider of texters to the Australian market. We want to, be known for our fabulous quality product, etc. And in 3 to 5 years, we want to get a certain level of market share, whatever it happens to be. That moves obviously into the business goal. And the business goal is understanding the size and spread of the organisation. So how big do we want to be? Where do we want to see ourselves? What's our geographical location? How many shops do we want to have? All those details about what we want to be doing there. Okay, so that's when we talk about vision, we're talking about the big picture, so what I want to achieve. When I'm talking about the business goal, I'm saying, well, how big a business do we want to be and where do we want that business located? Okay, we start to then talk about our financial goals and the strategic plan, and that's when we're starting to talk about, well, how much profit do we want to get out of this thing? Okay, when we start looking at, how much are we going to be putting in, what do we plan to get out, what are we going to target around, what's our sales forecasting, okay, what do we wish to achieve? That's what starts to go into the financial goals section. Obviously, stakeholders, we start to think about, who are our staff, who are the financiers, who's going to be involved in this organisation, okay? Who are our suppliers, to a degree, who's the customers, okay? And then obviously we then start to move down to the area of identifying and dealing with the risks. So what's the market risk? What's going on out there? What does that mean to us? Thinking about our financial resources, what are we going to require? Starting to think about, or what are the risks to the financial resources, more to the point. Things like political risk, is there a chance that this could go wrong? Dealing in the political sphere. Also considering the environment, and when we talk about that, we could be talking about the geographic environment or a whole range of other environmental issues. And lastly, thinking about our human resources. So when we're talking about human resource risk, we're looking at what if I can't get the right staff, or what if there's a problem with those staff, or what if they're not trained, whatever it happens to be. Okay, because obviously we're looking at forecasting over a period of time, our business needs are going to change, so we need to have the right staff on board to support that. Okay, now what happens is with that, they're the key areas that I want. Now the first thing I'm going to have is an executive summary. Okay, and an executive summary is just that, it's a summary. Okay, no hidden things there. Okay, that's the document that's going to provide the reader with an overview of what's happening. So what is the strategic plan? It's a one-page document, it's a summary. The idea is I should be able to pick up a summary, quickly understand all the elements in the plan so I get what you're doing and why you're doing it, and what you're planning to undertake. And in that page I can get a really firm idea of where this thing's going. Okay, I don't need a whole lot of detail. Once again, remember, it's part of the strategic plan. It is that high-level document. Okay, so once we've got the executive summary out of the way, we then move into the document itself. And in the document that this is when we start talking about our business plan. And that's then broken down into other various parts. So I've got a vision, okay, which we've got from there. I've talked about my situational analysis. Okay, so my situational analysis, what's happening in the world around me. I can talk in terms of, well, what are my business objectives? Once I move past my business objectives, I start to look at what are the strategies I'm going to employ to achieve them. Which is really starting to get to the how. I start to look at the SWOT, so the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within my organisation. Okay, so what have I got working for me? What's working against me? What opportunities are out there that I can explore, and what are the threats that might prevent me achieving that? And then lastly, my control mechanisms. And what I mean by my control mechanism is what sort of policies or procedures or what sort of detail am I going to implement that's going to allow me to track and measure what's going on in that business, okay? So the vision, to recap, it restates the strategic plan. Okay, what are we doing? What do we want to achieve? How do we want to achieve it? It's that big picture. I want to become the #1 pen merchant in Australia for the provision of top quality Staedtler pens in this country. Okay, we then start to look at the situational analysis. So what's the market doing? What's happening? What's the economic environment we're going into? Okay, so from there we then look at the business objectives, which are our operational objectives or financial goals. Okay, so what are the specific statements about what we expect to achieve over the next 3 to 5 years? Is it a certain level of growth? What's it going to be? We then look at our strategies, which are going to be done to achieve the business objectives. Okay, so we might have a couple of objectives: set up a shop or set up a bunch of retail outlets, develop a bunch of staff, get a bunch of reliable suppliers, and then come up with a new marketing campaign. And each one of those strategies might actually have each one of those objectives might have a bunch of strategies attached to it. Okay, so how are we going to do that? How are we going to locate the right shops? How are we going to locate the right people and the staff? How are we going to make sure they're trained? How are we going to go after our suppliers to make sure we've got the right people in the right place? Okay, so the SWOT, as I said, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats that might be faced by our business plan. Okay, so what's going to happen to our objectives out there? Okay, what can affect us? What strengths can we work with? What weaknesses do we need to offset? What are the opportunities that are being presented to us? If I'm selling pens, I know the start of a year is the start of a school year. That's a great time to get in. No point me starting, a quarter of the way through the year, the term, etc. There's, a couple of major times. 30 June is a big end of financial year. People are buying a lot of these things. Okay, I need to take advantage of that opportunity. The threat is that if I go in at the wrong time, I won't be able to capitalize on any of those good things. And then lastly, our control. So how we're going to ensure that the operational objectives are met. Okay, so how are we going to make sure we're keeping a cap on that? All right, one of the other decisions we then need to make is really about the type of business organisation that we are. Are we a for-profit organisation, in which case we're doing these things to try and generate a profit back to the business, shareholder wealth, whatever it happens to be, that we need to get some sort of rate of return? Or are we actually a not-for-profit organisation? So we direct our energy and effort without really worrying about getting a return on the investment back to anyone. So we don't need to repay money. An example would be Greenpeace or one of those sort of charity organisations where the whole point is to get the money out there. They're not there to make money, they're there to redistribute wealth. And both of those sort of sets of considerations are going to have massive impact on how we go about this, because one's really, dealing with how do I turn this into a money-making venture? The other one is how do I use this to redistribute assets as effectively as possible, but I'm not really looking to bring them back. Okay, so what we really want to try and do there is to start off and make sure that we begin with a good vision, that we understand where we're going from the bigger picture. We then come up with a bunch of goals or steps that are going to help us achieve that. We think about the financial goals. What do we need to get back? What's the return? We need to think about our stakeholders, so who's going to be involved in this activity, and we need to think about the obvious risks to that activity. Now, when we actually do up our documentation, the executive summary tells everyone in a one-pager what's going to happen. Then we move into the business plan. And we think about our vision. It's just the vision we have. The situation really comes out of our SWOT analysis and understanding what's happening around us. Okay, so we think about the business objectives, which we have up here. We think about the strategies we're going to employ to achieve those goals. We think about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the market. And we start to look at, well, how we're going to control that, particularly when we get to our risks. So how do we make sure things aren't going to go wrong, affect us negatively, and stop our 3 to 5 year plan from happening? Obviously, at the end of our 3 to 5 years, the thing we then do is set up for another 3 to 5 years. Okay, so the key part to remember that this isn't your day-to-day management document. What it really is, it's the high-level picture up at the top that allows people to get some guidance for their day-to-day decisions. We know what we're trying to achieve as a business over that longer term, and then all the decisions they then make can be about assisting us to get to that. Okay, so that's pretty much what goes into the strategic plan, and that's really the first document that you'll start to really come up with for your organisation. It's my 3 to 5 years. When it finishes, make another one. In the meantime, this gives us some great guidance as to where we want to go.